Hey everybody, welcome to the GitLab 12.8 live stream kickoff video. My name is Eric Brinkman. I'm the Director of Product for the Dev section, and I will be kicking us off in Scott's absence today. And then we will essentially go through each one of our sections outlining the exciting and new features that we can expect in GitLab version 12.8. And so I'm going to share my screen, set the stage, and then move into the dev section before handing it off to the next presenter. All right, so as always, you can find the key functionality that we're going to launch in 12.8 on our direction kickoff page, which is here at about.gitlab.com/direction/kickoff. This page is a long list of really great features and functionality that we are planning on launching in 12.8. As always, we plan ambitiously. So just because something's on this page doesn't mean it will necessarily land in GitLab 12.8. But we would like for everything to land here. But remember, we do plan ambitiously here at GitLab. And so I'm going to go ahead and kick off the exciting things to talk about in the dev section, and we'll move on into the other sections. So in dev, remember dev is three sections or three stages. Sorry, we have manage, plan, and create. And so I'll start with manage, moving into plan, and then create, and then hand off to Jason for CI/CD. So in manage, I'm really excited to talk about two themes. The first one is analytics, and the second one is some compliance and audit-based features. So specifically to analytics, we'll be focusing on a minimum viable change for instance level activity. And this will really help people understand the value that their GitLab instance is providing. So think like cumulative number of projects and groups, issues created, merge requests created, pipelines run, statistics like that will really help you understand the value that GitLab is providing to your organization. We'll also be focusing on finally launching our customizable cycle analytics and making that generally available. Cycle analytics is a very useful feature to help you manage the life cycle of issues and merge requests as they move through GitLab, but it is not customizable, meaning if you have a special stage or a specific set of actions that you care about measuring the time between, it's impossible to do that. And so customizable stages will let you define a stage based off of a number of actions inside of GitLab, and then measure the time between those two stages. And then we'll also be renaming this feature to value stream analytics, as it's really about managing and measuring the value stream of your organization through the product. So really exciting stuff in analytics. I also want to highlight a few compliance features. We've received a ton of feedback that just the audit capabilities, the audit logs, the audit events aren't as robust as they need to be for making compliancy audits and evidence collection really seamless. And so we're going to be doing a number of things that will really help not just people who are auditing their GitLab instances, but also using GitLab.com instead of self-managing GitLab themselves. So the first one of these is configuring push rules at the group level. This is something that you can already configure at the instance level and at the project level, but you can't do it at the group level. And the reason that's important is because if you are a GitLab.com user, you don't have access to the instance because it's a giant instance of GitLab. And so you're limited to setting those push rules at just the project level, which can be a little bit tedious to do that on every single project. And so we're going to enable this at the group level, bringing that parity there. And with respect to making our audit logs a little bit more robust, we'll be adding a few things into our audit logs. So the first is the ability to track merge request approval rules setting changes in the audit log. So for example, if you wanted to know if someone changed your merge request approval rules, that would be something that you would be able to now track in the audit logs. And we'll also be tracking user events, so such as a user being created, a blocked or deleted, as well as user name changes in the audit log. So really important functionality coming here for our compliance group. Now moving on to plan, we've talked about this one a number of times, but we'll continue to work on adding burn-up charts to milestones. Burn-up charts are a useful tool for understanding if scope was added or removed from a sprint, and gives you a more historically accurate viewpoint of the workload and the scope of a milestone than a burn down chart might provide you. And so excited to iterate here. And then we're also going to continue iterating on our real-time functionality inside the application. It's our long-term vision to make most features and fields real-time inside of the application. And the way that we're going to approach this is just by getting one of these sidebar fields to be updated in real time. We're likely targeting the assignee or the milestone box. And the reason this is important is because if I'm looking at an issue and you're looking at an issue at the same time and I update the labels, you actually don't see these labels update until you refresh the issue. And so depending on how often you refresh an issue, you could be looking at something that's stale. We want to just make the experience a little bit better inside the application. So we're going to be starting here by iterating on real time by focusing on these sidebar tasks. And I also want to highlight one thing on Service Desk, which lives in the plan stage as well. Service Desk is a really neat tool for some of our customers who want to provide customer support or deal with customer issues, triaging things like that, or bugs. And what you can't do today, and what's pretty common in most customer ticketing applications, is the ability to have a private comment. So if you wanted to get a customer issue, bring that in, discuss it internally before responding to a customer, you couldn't do that today because everything was public. But now with the ability to have private comments, you'll be able to kind of discuss those internally and come up with a game plan before fully responding to a customer. And so really excited to see this. Obviously, the issue's been open for a number of years. It has a lot of upvotes, and I'm sure Service Desk users will be quite excited for this functionality to land. And then moving on to our last stage within the dev section, create. I talked about this issue last time, but we're going to continue to work on it in GitLab 12.8, which is the ability to scope MR approval rules to protected branches. Developers can often be slowed down a little bit by working in a project that has MR approval rules turned on because they might not be merging into protected branches all the time with respect to feature development. And so we wanted the ability to basically just say, hey, we only really want MR approval rules on, say, master or some other protected branch. But the branches that you need to do your feature development, feel free to merge there without an approval. And so excited to bring this functionality to make developers a little bit more efficient. As always, we're continuing to work on our Giddily HA implementation. So in 12.8, the goal is to observe Giddily HA replication in production on gitlab.com to verify the work that we've done so far on replication. By the end of 12.8, our goal is to be able to manually fail over and to know if there was any data loss. Obviously, there will be no impact to any customers here, but we want to ensure that this experience and this implementation is robust. And this is the top priority for the Giddily team. Obviously, very important to a lot of our customers and to really investing into that enterprise readiness theme that we're thinking about throughout this year. I don't highlight this project a lot, but I do want to talk about it very, very briefly on this call. We have a product called Gitter, and Gitter is a great chat platform for open source communities. And you can have a really great integration with Gitter and GitHub, but the GitLab integration was lacking a little bit. And so in 12.8, we're going to be focusing on doing GitLab group-based communities. And so if your account is linked to GitLab, it can suggest the GitLab projects that you're in to make rooms for those. And then we'll also do that from a project perspective as well. And so excited to see the integration between GitLab and Gitter become a little bit more robust and a little bit stronger. And then the last piece to highlight for Create is our editor team. And so I'm excited that in 12.7, we kind of completed a spike into looking into a dark theme for the web IDE. And I'm really pumped that this one's going to be scheduled and prioritized for 12.8, where we'll have a dark syntax highlighting theme for the web IDE. It's just going to be the text pane for now as a iteration, as a step to make the whole thing dark, but really excited to see some work here. And then the last thing to highlight too is that we're going to be iterating on the right sidebar of the web IDE. And one of the cool things about this is that we're going to move the merge request information down to the bottom. And so you can see here that it's going to be a little bit more IDE-like. If you use a local IDE like VS Code or something like that, you get a lot of information along the side, along the bottom bar. And we're going to be emulating that experience right inside the web IDE. So tons of great stuff coming in the dev section of 12.8. As always, it'll be packed, and can't wait to see a lot of these things land. So now we're going to move on to the CI/CD section. So Jason, it's over to you.
Thanks, Eric. That's so much great stuff. Let me get my screen shared here. All right. For the CI/CD section, we've also got a bunch of really amazing features that I'm super excited to deliver. It was actually hard to pick the ones that I wanted to show. But just to catch everybody up, the CI/CD section includes Verify, which is all about continuous integration. It includes Package, which is about package management and storing your repository files and things like that as part of your builds and deployments. And then the release stage, which is about actually delivering that software to your users. As always, we've got the videos here that you can watch for a deep dive on any of these topics. But I've pre-chosen a few issues that I want to deep dive into. And the first is one that I've been really looking forward to for a long time. It's had a ton of participation and collaboration with users and engineers and everybody who's going to be using this feature. But in 12.7, to get to the point, we are releasing child-parent pipelines. And what this is going to enable is that a pipeline can trigger a child pipeline from itself, which runs independently and is connected with the pipeline in terms of status attribution, which is a cool feature on its own that actually helps you organize things and help keep things simple and avoid overcomplicating your GitLab CI YAMLs. But what we're introducing with this feature supporting includes via artifacts is actually something pretty clever that I'm really looking forward to having in production. So what this will let you do is have a job inside of your pipeline that generates a GitLab CI YAML at runtime. And then that GitLab CI YAML can then be triggered as a child pipeline. And what this enables is an incredible amount of flexibility when it comes to the behavior of your pipelines. We've often had requests for things like we want dynamic jobs, we want dynamic behaviors in pipelines, we want to run some jobs, we want to, depending on the output of those, we want to do different things. This comes up in mono repos, it comes up in ML type workflows, it comes up when you're doing things like multi-platform targeting. So if you want to do a matrix of platform targets and then deployments, then you want to generate that on the fly. This helps us avoid complicating the GitLab CI YAML, and we don't have to generate keywords for all of these different things. We don't have to make everything too complex. Now, just simply generate your YAML, trigger your child pipeline, and it will do the custom thing that you need to do, and then it will send status attribution back to the parent pipeline. So in combination with other features we have like the DAG, I'm sorry, I'm really excited about this one, so I could probably just go on, and I should probably stop. But I would love to hear you, if you're interested in this topic, jump into the conversation on this one, and let us know what your use cases are, how you're going to use this one, and we would love to hear it. The next one that I want to highlight is also from the Verify team, and this is integrating automated accessibility scanning as part of our review apps. So this is another great feature where we're delivering something that really can make a difference for people. So if you're using GitLab review apps, what this will do is automatically run PA11Y or PALI, which is a accessibility scanning tool that's open source, and then give you the results of the accessibility analysis of your review app. So you can see how this is changing over time, how this is what issues might be in there that are going to impact accessibility for your users. So really also looking forward to that one and helping to improve the accessibility of the web for the users of GitLab. Next up is putting the finishing touches on our NuGet repository. As always, Windows is a big focus for us, and the delivery of the NuGet repository will help make our .NET portfolio even better and easier to use, and basically you'll be able to get everything inside of GitLab, and it will all work wonderfully. Finally, or not finally yet, but the first one for the release stage is the collection of release evidence at the end date of the release. So recently we added this evidence collection feature, which would, at the moment a release was created, it would take a snapshot of your metadata that's associated with your project and issues and everything like that. And it would make it available later for an auditor who wants to know what the state was of your release and how did it evolve over time, what did you deliver. Well, that's a good iteration forward to take a snapshot then, but you sort of need two snapshots to compare. So this adds a snapshot at the release end date. so that you now have automatically collected a snapshot then as well, and then you can compare these two things. And so an auditor can say, you know, what was your plan? What did you deliver? And use this automation to do that. And as always, when I talk about this feature, I just love to say that, you know, the way that we're trying to build compliance in the pipeline here is that it's all just integrated automatically. And as a developer, you don't really have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to build compliance logs, and GitLab just collects it for you because we have the single application that can have access to all of this data and then just store it nicely in one place that an auditor can engage with it. Next up is feature flag strategies. So this is a refinement on how feature flag strategies work. We're trying to get this feature up into a more viable and more usable state. And this is a big step towards that. So the way that strategies were working previously is that you could have a strategy for a feature flag, but then this would be applied to all of the environments. What you're going to see after the 12.8 release is that you can define a strategy separately from any feature flag or environment, and then you can apply that strategy to any combination thereof. So it'll be much more flexible. You can have a different strategy in different environments, and it will be, you can also have multiple strategies per environment, which will then cascade after each other. And it will just be a much more powerful way to engage with our feature flags. And then finally, we're making investment. This is sort of the beginning of another big series of iterations where we're going to improve the way that we're doing hypercloud deployments that don't use Kubernetes. So if you're using Kubernetes today, you have Auto DevOps, which will do a lot of amazing things for you automatically. But if you're using, you know, ECS and you're not using Kubernetes, then you sort of have to do things a little bit more manually. We're going to bring that deployment up to the same kind of level of quality and automation and automaticness that you get with Auto DevOps. And so this is a step towards that. And so what we're doing here is adding a new kind of environment variable that will collect your Amazon configuration. This will then be used by some things that we're building later, which will look for this and then use it on a per environment basis to deliver the code to the right place. So if you're interested in this, check it out. And those are the ones that I wanted to highlight for CI/CD today. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to you, Kenny, for ops.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, I'm super excited about those AWS deployment primitives as well. My name is Kenny Johnston. I cover the ops section, which is the configure and monitor stages of the DevOps lifecycle. I'm representing with my GitLab product team shirt today, which were handed out to all the GitLab product members as part of a holiday gift from our boss. So shout out to Scott. I wanted to cover three kind of key topics in my discussion. The first is about ongoing maturity increments and iterations that are happening within each one of the individual teams within the configure and monitor stage. The second is some highlights of interesting improvements that we're making in the 12.8 release that show the value of a single application. And then the last is a follow-up from something that I announced in the 12.7 kickoff about moving observability to core. So I'll start with each one of our teams are typically highlight and focus in a given release on moving one of our existing categories that is in their purview up in a kind of category maturity increment. We use minimal, viable, complete as category maturity definitions here at GitLab. We're very transparent about those. You can find those all over our website. Within the configure stage, the orchestration group is focused primarily on Kubernetes management and moving that from its existing state of viable slowly up towards complete. A lot of that you've heard in past kickoffs about our move to start deploying and configuring the managed apps that are added to your Kubernetes cluster in code in a separate kind of Kubernetes cluster management project. So there's ongoing effort to move the existing way in which we deploy the managed apps to this kind of CI-based way, so that when you want to make configuration changes to those apps, you do that in code, just like all the other tools you're used to. So that is their primary focus. Within the configure systems group, they're very focused on moving serverless to viable. We had a great initial MVC and have been adding improvements to your ability to deploy serverless functions and applications from straight within GitLab. Moving it to viable has really meant part of the value of serverless is that you don't have to think about infrastructure. And one of the things that we're trying to enable is a platform team to kind of set up the ability to deploy functions once within a GitLab instance, and then that be available to all developers. So we're adding things like instance-wide domains or group-wide domains, as well as instance-wide SSL certs. so that your developers can quickly add functions right there in a project that they've created and know that it will reliably be deployed to some common domain with the SSL certs that your organization is using. Those are really great improvements in the configure stage, incrementing our maturity. In the monitor stage, we're focused on moving our logging capabilities to viable. Today, they're minimal. Most of your experience today is around kind of grepping or tailing logs right off of your Kubernetes cluster. We're adding the ability to install Elasticsearch in your Kubernetes cluster, as well as have an experience where you get a log explorer of those aggregated logs. So we'll continue to improve the log drill down experience within GitLab. And then the next is error tracking, where we're iterating heavily on how developers interact with the errors that are caught in the error tool that we use, Sentry, and showing those right in the GitLab interface so you can interact with them right there in GitLab. Those are the 4 category maturities we're working on. I wasn't sharing my screen. We don't have specific screenshots. You can follow the issues about exactly where we're incrementing those. I do want to share my screen now and make sure that I show you some of the cool improvements that I think are going to be incrementing, that we'll be working on, that also show the value of the GitLab single application. The first is we'll be adding in the configure stage. When you have a deploy job that's deploying to Kubernetes, we're going to start giving you really great context about where that's getting deployed. So we'll show not only the GitLab environment and the cluster, but also the specific namespace that job is deploying, the application that it's deploying to in your Kubernetes cluster. It's a great way to connect, the CD process right into how you've configured the cluster. The next one is about this default Kubernetes cluster management project. Today, when you attach a Kubernetes cluster, you can also manage that via our CI principles and in a repository where you define the code by adding a cluster management project. This has been in alpha for a couple of releases. In 12.8, we're going to improve that by automatically creating a cluster management project if you don't specify one that already exists, which allows you to do things like, I'm showing an example of a cluster that I have. You previously would have to select one, but if it's created for you by default, you can do things like define and install a new application. In this case, this is the code I would use to add Sentry to my GitLab cluster that is connected via that connection to this project with one click, and then it gets deployed via our standard CI methods. So a really great improvement about connecting tools that developers are used to using about configuring the state of applications right here within GitLab. The next one is about the ability to clone dashboards. So today, developers, GitLab provides great default dashboards for the metrics that we think are most important to you. But we know that people want to take those dashboards and adjust them slightly for the specific needs of their application. So in 12.8, we'll be working on the ability to quickly, in this dropdown of the dashboards, duplicate the dashboard you're looking on into the dashboard YAML file that you can then adjust for your specific needs and save. That allows developers to quickly get up to speed on creating the dashboards that are correctly configured for their applications. The last issue that I wanted to highlight that again shows the value of the single application is this ability to automatically, when an alert is created, embed the relevant metric. We've had the ability to, if you supply a link into an issue description, it will unfurl the relevant metric for the dashboard that you've provided a link to. In this case, this is an incident alert that was created because core usage exceeded a certain threshold. We will in 12.8 immediately add this metric chart for that specific metric right there in the issue. So when you're responding to incidents from your application's performance, you can immediately get access to the metrics that triggered that alert. So those are the issues that I wanted to highlight about showing the value of the single application. I also wanted to follow up on a commitment we made in the 12.7 kickoff. As part of GitLab's annual gift, we are moving our observability tools to core. And so in 12.8, both teams in the monitor stage will be working on moving logging, tracing, and metrics and alerting to core as part of our commitment to democratizing ops and giving open source observability tools to developers everywhere. Those are the highlights from the ops section. With that, I will hand it over to David.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. So thank you very much, Kenny, for handing it over. I know we're running a little bit short on time here, so I'll be very brief. From the secure standpoint, the section is very much heads down working on deliverables that are expected to come out in 12.9, as well as getting caught up on some of the tech debt needed to achieve goals beyond 12.9. So with that, you'll see that right now there's no committed deliverables customer facing for you within stack analysis. Dynamic analysis, we do have one item, and that's focused on exposing the affected projects at the instance level on the instance dashboard. So this will begin to allow you to see health and the security status of each of the projects all the way at the top of your instance. From a composition analysis standpoint, we do have 3 items we're working on that are highlighted on the kickoff page as well as here on my screen. The one I want to focus on is Go dependency scanning. And you'll see it's labeled there as alpha. And that's because we are just rolling this out. It's not feature full yet. So with that, we do suggest you begin to use it. You'll begin to see the benefit, and over the next release or 2, it'll get very much rounded out and be in line with the other types of dependency scanning we offer you today. On the defense side, a couple of the items we were talking about our last several releases are now available. Here you can see the committed items. The first I want to highlight is adding audit mode to our container network security solution. And this is very important to highlight for everybody because this is an example of GitLab contributing back to the open source community. And so we are adding an audit mode, so a detect only mode to Cilium and contributing upstream back to the original open source project. And the defense team is very excited about this because this is now not only showing how we support open source with our open source stewardship, as Kenny highlighted with ops, this is also us committing upstream to improve security for everyone. The last item I want to highlight is related to the standalone vulnerabilities object, or sometimes referred to as first-class vulnerabilities. This is our first step towards adding risk-based vulnerability management to the GitLab UI. And you'll see here a new looking dashboard. This is enabled by using a feature flag. Until we have it feature parity with the existing security dashboard, the existing security dashboard would take priority. However, you can enable it and begin to see the work that we are doing to improve upon what you can see in the dashboard and the type of data we can report to you historically. With that, I'll hand it over to Josh.
Thanks, David. So we are working primarily on a couple themes here in, I think I have the right window. I think so. Great. We're working on a couple themes here for enablement. One is performance and the other is resilience. We'll quickly go through a couple of our items here. We are low on time, so please bear with me. And so the first one is that we're working to enable an easier framework for supporting new data types into Geo. You can actually see how much work it took to enable Geo for, I'm missing the tab here, for design repositories. It took us about 6 or 7 different issues, and that's quite a lot of work. And so with the just new version, we're actually looking to, actually this is it right here. So this is great. You can see it took us quite a number of issues to support design repositories, and we're now going to go ahead and try to, for our next data type, implement more of a framework so that while we're doing the work, we can also lay the groundwork to let us add new data types faster in the future. So this is a great tool to help us hopefully democratize access to adding Geo support for everyone's features in the future, and let us go faster and get a better coverage more quickly on the Geo side. We're also looking to improve support for planned failovers in the Geo side. These are things like a quick maintenance mode to let your secondary catch up to your primary before switching over. That way you don't have data loss. And then of course also enabling Geo on GitLab.com. On the performance front, we've been working hard on tweaking Puma and making sure we're ready to go here. You can see we're actually right now we're heads down on doing a lot of analysis on finding the right settings and the right thread counts per worker and things like that. So you can see we're doing some deep analysis here over the last few days. Overall, we're still working to get that right tuning, and we'll continue to do that in the 12-date milestone with the goal of delivering that to .com and to our customers here in the very, very near future. Similarly, on the performance side of things, we're also looking to continue to improve our project import export functionality. you can see we continuing to making sure we have a good integrity test, making sure we can test this for both, again, making sure it works, as well as also making sure we don't have any performance regressions in the future. And we'll also be working with the import team more closely in this release to make sure we can hand off all of our knowledge over to that team, who will be great stewards of this going forward. Finally, here, we're also working hard to bring PG11 support to GitLab. This is critical for us to continue to scale for .com, but also for our larger customers. And this will allow us to take advantage of key features like partitioning. And so we're adding support for PG11 here as opt-in in 12.8, and we're driving towards making it a required feature in 13.0 in May, so we can actually leverage those features going forward, like partitioning, and bring those performance benefits to everyone in the very near future here. Other exciting things, we're also looking to enable Elasticsearch for paid groups in GitLab.com, and at 12.8, we'll be looking to roll this out to our beta testing group. So if you're interested in becoming a part of that beta testing group, definitely let us know. And then finally here on the ecosystem side of things, we're also looking to take a similar approach to Geo, in the sense that we know we need to bring Jira support to groups. And rather than doing all this special one-off code for the Jira integration and then find out we need to do the same thing for other integrations, because we have around 30 plus of them, we're looking to do with Geo, lace on the foundation as we go through this process to essentially allow us to more easily add other integrations here in the future to the group level, and making sure we have good patterns for things like inheritance, disabling inheritance, and managing these settings. We'll also look to be likely renaming project services to integrations to be more clear about what they are in this release as well. So with that, we can wrap up here. Again, we have a whole bunch more exciting things in this release than what we covered. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you again next release for 12.9, and it will be even better than this release was, or proves to be. So thank you, everyone, and can't wait to bring 12.8 to all of you.
Don't forget, best release ever.